Hi class, this is Mr. Morris. This is our 6th video of an answer key for the summer homework. This is summer homework number 1, chapter number 1. We're doing problem number 6. All right, this one can get a little bit tricky because we are doing multiple operations and we've got to round to the correct number of significant figures. That's kind of the key here. Okay, so we need to think about order of operations, and we need to think about what type of operation that we're doing. Remember our sig fig rules. I've actually got at the top of this page here just something for you to remember. Addition and subtraction, we're going to keep the least number of decimal places. If it's multiplication and division, we need to keep the least number of significant figures. So let's go down here, and that becomes relevant again down to number 7. This one's not really got anything too tricky with it, but that is something you always want to think about when you've got multiple things going on in the same problem. Okay, right here we've got multiplication and division. So I'm going to use the rule that says I'm going to keep the least number of significant figures. So let's look at our numbers. I've got 3 sig figs. This is 3 sig figs. I know that 0 can trick people sometimes, but just go to your first non-zero. Keep counting to the end if there's a decimal, or keep counting until you get to your last non-zero if there's no decimal. Okay, so I've got 3 sig figs, 3 sig figs, 3 sig figs, and 3 sig figs. Okay, that's fairly easy. We just need to do it correctly in the calculator, and then we will round it to 3 sig figs. So we have 0.102 times 0.0821 times 273 divided by 1.01. 2.2635, so on. Okay, I want 3 sig figs, so that's 2.26. Just check your next number. Is it above 5 or equal to 5? If the answer is no, we're going to go with 2.26. Okay, it was a 3, 2.26. All right, the next one. I have 2 sig figs, and then when you're doing scientific notation, you always look at the numbers before the x. So before the multiplication sign, I have 2 4 sig figs. So I have 2 sig figs or 4 sig figs. 2 sig figs is what I'm going to round to. So let's try that out. 4.0 times 10 to the, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong question. We'll get to that. 0.14. 0.14 times 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd, so 6.022. And then when I do the scientific notation in the calculator, I'm going to use the second button right here. And then the comma button, E button. And we don't add a 10 or multiplication sign or anything. That E means times 10 to the power. Okay, 6.02 E, which means times 10 to the power of, I'm going to put 23. All right, there we are. We have 8.4308 E22. Don't forget to always look for that E at the end. 8.4308. Okay, and I want to round to 2 sig figs, so that's going to be 8.4 E22. That's times 10 to the 22. 8.4 times 10 to the 22. I get asked sometimes, can we just leave it as an E? The answer is no. You can do that maybe as an intermediate step if it helps you to remember how to enter it in a calculator, but your answer should never have an E in it. Change it into standard scientific notation, times 10 to the power. All right. Down here I've got 4.0 times 10 to the 4th. I've got 5.02 times 10 to the negative 3rd. I've got 7.34993 times 10 to the 2. All of these are scientific notation. I'm multiplying each of them, so I need to look at the least number of sig figs. This one has 2 sig figs, and that is definitely the lowest number of sig figs we have. Don't forget how to put that in the calculator correctly. Let's do that. 4.0 second, comma, which is times 10 to the 4th, times 5.021 times 10 to the negative 3rd. Don't forget, when you get a negative like that, if you push the minus sign, you're going to get an error every time. Don't ever use this button to mean negative. Negative is this one, down at the very bottom, right next to the period, or the point, decimal. 5.02 times 21 times 10 to the negative third, times 7.34993 times 10 to the second. Enter. Whoa, that's a huge number. So there's a couple ways that we could write this. I'm going to go through it. Oh, you can't even see that because of the glare. Let me move it. There we are. See that huge number there now. Okay, so I could round it just by changing that 4. I'm going to keep 2 sig figs, so 1 and 4. Change that 4 to a 5 because of that 7. And then replace all of the numbers up to the decimal place with zeros. No decimal, though. If you put a decimal, that makes those significant. I only want 2 significant figures. Okay, so this is one way of writing it. 1, 5. And then let's see how many zeros would that be. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 zeros. You can kind of check it if you can say that number. So this is 150,000, right? Let's check this. Is this 147,615? Is that pretty close to 150,000? Yes, it is. Okay. Now, if I just said 15, it's nowhere close. So it's definitely not just 15. It would have to be 150,000. Okay. Now, I can actually change this to scientific notation, which I would probably do because it's a whole lot easier to do that. I'm going to go 1.5. Let's see how many spaces we would have to move it to get it right after the first non-zero. Get our decimal right after the first non-zero. This is a huge number, so my exponent will be positive. Moving it back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces. So I've got a 1.5 times 10 to the 5 spaces, positive fifth. It would be negative fifth. It was a very, very small number, like smaller than 1 decimal number. But if you've got something bigger than 10, your exponent will be positive. All right, one more in this section. We've got 2.00 times 10 to the 6th divided by 3.00 times 10 to the negative 7th. And I'm going to get an answer first. Crazy long number. Don't forget to always look to the end and see if there's an E. There is in this case. E12 means times 10 to the 12th power. Okay, so all I need to do, I don't have to do anything with that number. I'm going to leave it alone, times 10 to the 12th. But I do have to round what's before the E to match the least number of sig figs in this problem. I have 3 sig figs here, and I have 3 sig figs there. Remember, when you are doing scientific notation, the sig figs are everything that's before the multiplication sign. So I have 3 sig figs. This should be 6.66. Because of that 6, we're going to round that up to 7. So it would be 6.67 times 10 to the 12th. That E12 means times 10 to the 12th. I know I'm kind of repeating myself, but I want to make sure that we get that. All right, I hope that was a helpful review of how to do significant figures with mixed operations like this one.